Hi everyone, my name is Jane and welcome to a new video. So today will be kind of a serious topic again, because today we will be talking about the struggles of being a goth. And I think a lot of these points will kind of apply to anyone who is alternative, so not only goths but also maybe some other people who are alternative. So this video is not actually only for goths, but I will be talking about like the goth side of things because, well, I am a goth, so I know the most about that. Also, I'm sorry that I'm looking very not inspirational today. Like, I'm looking very simple, but it's so really hot in here, and I just didn't even want to bother to think about what I was gonna wear and what things I was gonna put on and how I was gonna do my makeup. So if I look kind of like boring, I'm sorry. I just really didn't have the energy because it's just so warm in here right now. So yeah, today is about the negative side of being goth. Which is actually not really a happy video to make, especially not as a goth and not for a goth. So as a disclaimer, because I know there's gonna be some people who are gonna complain about why I'm making this video, I am a goth because I choose to be, and I am proud to call myself that. So it's not like I actually don't want to be a goth, or I'm trying to make other people not want to be a goth with this video. And I also understand that with a subculture like this, there's gotta be some things that you have to be prepared for. Like, as soon as you're gonna be different, as soon as you're gonna do something crazy, there will be people who react bad to it, there will be bad sides about it. Like, everyone who is goth understands that, but we still choose to be a goth. Like, obviously I love being a goth. I have been for about 10 years now. Like, to me, being goth is worth it. Like, to me, the struggles aren't that bad that I don't want to be a goth anymore. So that's just for the people who are gonna be like, well, why are you goth if there's so many struggles? Because there's more positive points about it, and because I love being this, I love being myself. And I'm also kind of making this video for like awareness for the people who are contributing to these struggles, because a lot of these things that can be struggles for goths are because of other people, mostly non-goth people, but also actual goth people who are making it harder for other goths. And maybe it will change the view of some people, and maybe it will change the way that people see goths. And that is kind of also one of my goals on this entire channel, is to make people more aware of what goth is and especially what it isn't, because the main thing that makes being goth so hard is that there are so many misconceptions. So now let's start with the video. Firstly, one of the kind of negative points about being goth is that you're always seen as weird. Like, you're always the weird one, the strange one, which is often a thing that many goths like. I personally, I love being weird. I love standing out, and many goths do, because that's kind of like a goth thing, I guess. Many goths just like that. But there can be things about that which makes it hard to be seen as weird. For example, because you're seen as weird, a lot of people do not understand you. And one of the examples is that a lot of families often don't understand when a family member is a goth, because they think it's just too rebellious, or it's stupid, or you look weird, or maybe they're even afraid that you will get bullied for being weird. Like, there's just so many reasons why oftentimes some family members just won't understand you or even not accept you. Which is one of the negative points about being seen as weird by other people. Obviously, as a person, you don't want to make your family or your friends ashamed of you. Like, you want to be able to be yourself without making anyone ashamed of you, but sometimes that just kind of happens because as a goth, you're weird. Sometimes you look weird, or you act weird, or you're just seen as weird, which can also affect the people around you, which is one of the things that I don't hear about a lot. But I think this can be a really big struggle for a lot of people. Like I often see people talking about being bullied, which I will be talking about too. But just being seen as different can already have a lot of impact on yourself and on the people around you. So that can be kind of difficult, especially if you're underage or just really young, when your parents have a lot of influence on you, or they can decide a lot for you. It can be really hard to express yourself, or to find a balance between being weird, being your weird self, being goth, being alternative, and being accepted by your family, or giving off an image that doesn't make your family feel ashamed or feel bad about you. Also, just to be clear, not every one of these struggles is a thing in my life. Like, I'm not saying all of these things because I am experiencing them. A lot of these things are things that I've seen from other people, or that I've heard from other people, that I just don't think is talked about enough. But yeah, especially with family that you live with, it can be so hard to look goth, or to be goth, or to stand out, because it can cause discussions, it can cause fights, it can cause a lot of bad things, which is often the result from a misunderstanding. Because a lot of times when you tell your family that you're goth or you are looking goth, when they don't accept it or when they don't like you being different and weird, it's just because they are afraid that you will get bullied, or they don't understand why you're doing this, or they think you're doing this because you want to rebel against your family or something like that, which oftentimes just isn't the case. Like in some cases, teenagers will become emo or goth or whatever just to kind of oppose their parents or whatever, but mostly that isn't the case at all. So that is why my advice for the people who are experiencing this struggle is talk about it. Literally just sit down with your family or with your friends or whoever is not accepting of you or who doesn't understand you. Just sit down and explain. Literally just explain what is goth to you. Why are you doing this? Why do you want to look this way? And just also try to like explain that you're not doing this to rebel against them. Yeah, just try to talk about it, because I promise that will really help. If someone understands why you want to do your makeup like this, if someone understands why you call yourself part of the goth subculture, if they understand that it isn't for any negative reasons and it's just because you want to be yourself, they will probably be a lot more accepting of it. It can then still be really hard to find a balance between being yourself and being what they want you to be, because yeah, well, if you want to look really goth with goth makeup, sometimes it's just too much for your family, even if they understand why you do it. Obviously there are a lot of people who just don't understand, and people will be worried about their reputation if they walk next to you, if you're out with your friends or your family and you look totally like a weirdo. They might feel afraid that you are being judged, or they are being judged because they are with you, which can be really hard. And it's just one of the things that I don't think is talked about a lot, and it can still be a really big thing for especially young people and for people who start being goth. So something that is kind of related to this is being seen as a weirdo, being seen as different, makes you a target for bullying. It's not like every goth is bullied. Like I personally, I'm not bullied, or I was never bullied because I was a goth at least. But some people experience this, and some goths aren't even only vocally bullied, but also physically, which is just terrible. Like especially if you're bullied because you just want to be yourself, like if you want to stand out, if you want to look different than other people do, that shouldn't be a reason for you to be bullied. But sadly it happens. Obviously that's kind of something that you can expect. That's something that you could be waiting for as soon as you start dressing different, because you know that there will be people who have a different opinion about it, which is of course fine. Like if someone doesn't like the way you dress or the way you act, that is okay, that is their problem. But as soon as people start being violent, or as soon as people start really making your life difficult because of that, it's just not okay anymore. And this is something that I hope will disappear in the future, because this is not only a thing for goths, this is a thing for everyone who's alternative. As soon as you're different, or as soon as you try to be more of yourself and less like the others, there's a chance that people will not accept you. It's unfortunately kind of a side effect of being part of a subculture. And because I'm mostly talking about goths in this video, this bullying can cause people to stop being goth. It can cause people to not want to be goth, just because people are being absolutely awful about it, which is just so stupid. Like they will feel like they cannot express themselves because they are bullied, and that's just terrible. But I don't think much is gonna change, because people are just so good at being negative, especially negative about each other. It's just so easy to say something bad or mean to someone, especially when you don't understand them. If you see someone as different, if you see someone as part of a different group, it's so easy to just be mean about it because you just can't relate to them. And I wish people would just have a bit more empathy and a bit more understanding for each other, especially when it's about innocent things like being part of a community or a subculture. Like it doesn't harm you, so like they didn't do anything wrong, so there should be no reason to bully them or to be mean to them. But unfortunately it happens, which is also just a struggle that goths and alternative people do experience a lot. So onto another topic, another struggle, which is why it can be hard to be a goth. And that is because there's just so many misconceptions about goth. If you just go to my channel, you can find at least 4 videos about misconceptions about goths. And there's just so many more, because a lot of people just don't know what it means to be goth. A lot of people think it's about depression or BDSM or witchcraft, or that goth people are a fan of Billie Eilish, or that goth people are goth to be a goth girlfriend. Like, there's just so many misconceptions, which is why it can be hard to tell people that you're goth, because often they don't understand what that means. A lot of people judge goths because they just don't understand what it means to be a goth, and a lot of people just see us as something that we're not. Like, a lot of people think she looks that way or she's part of that community, so that means she must be depressed or a witch or a Satan worshipper or whatever. And a lot of times goths need to explain what they actually are and what they are actually not, which can be very tiring, which can be annoying. Like, so many people just have a wrong idea of what you are, because there's just so much misinformation about it on the internet and on social media and also on TV. Like, if you're watching a cartoon with a goth girl in it, or just like any program with a goth girl in it, it's often a certain type of girl, if you know what I mean, which just isn't always a good depiction of goths. So if you want to know more about these misconceptions, go watch my other videos. I explain what kind of misconceptions there are about goths and why they are not true, and what we can do about these misconceptions. So do watch my other videos if you're interested in that. Another thing as a goth that I struggle with a lot is the inconsistencies in the goth subculture. So for example, the meaning of being goth differs a lot between people. Like, some people think that being goth is listening to goth music, but there are some people who say no, you're actually a goth if you listen to the music and you dress like a goth. Some people think it's mostly about the mindset and the lifestyle. Some people think it's mostly about politics. There's just a lot of different opinions and a lot of different definitions for when you're actually a goth, which can just make it hard for people to understand, like, if they are actually a goth. And it also causes a lot of discussion between people, like people calling each other posers, people calling each other fake, because some people just don't exactly know the meaning of goth. Lately, the definition has mostly been that you are a goth if you listen to goth music, but a lot of people think that is not enough in order to call yourself a goth, and some people don't think the music is all that important, and there's other things that are more important, such as the politics or your mindset or your lifestyle. Like, this can be very hard for people, especially when you're new to the goth subculture. It's just really hard because there's so many inconsistencies and a lot of different sources say different things about it. So the meaning of this subculture can just be really hard to explain as well as understand. Like, a lot of people call themselves goth but don't know exactly why, and some people don't dare to call themselves goth because they don't think they meet all the criteria for it, which I think is just too much. Like, there shouldn't be any criteria in order to be part of a subculture. If you want to be a goth and you're interested in anything that is goth, I think you can be a goth. I've said that in many other videos. I just think all the gatekeeping and all the doing difficult about what is and isn't goth is just unnecessary. Like, obviously we shouldn't call everything and everyone goth, because people who think that Billie Eilish is goth make me really mad. Like, we need to gatekeep those kind of things, but I just think we need to be a bit less strict about when someone can be a goth. Like, if someone really badly wants to be a goth but they don't know everything about the history of goths, like, who cares? They can be a goth if they really want to be. Another really inconsistent thing is the music. Like, there's also a lot of discussion about what music is actually goth. It's especially difficult with the bands or artists who sound goth but who don't want to call themselves goth. Like, there's some bands who have claimed to definitely not be goth, but if you listen to it, it sounds exactly how goth music sounds. And there's also many bands that really want to be goth, but it just doesn't sound super goth. And there's also many bands that haven't clearly said if they are goth, so there's a lot of discussion, like, is The Cure really goth? Is Type O Negative really goth? Which can be very obvious to people who are very experienced with the goth subculture, but especially for baby bats and new goths and young people, it can be just very hard to understand, like, which music is actually goth, what should I listen to, and this also makes it difficult for them to understand if they can call themselves a goth, because it's sometimes just not clear if the bands that you like are actually gothic bands. So yeah, I'm not saying that it's with every band, because obviously there are just some artists that are very obviously goth and some artists that very obviously aren't, like Billie Eilish. What's also a very big thing is the fashion, the goth fashion. I've talked about this way too many times, and I will try not to say anything that I've said 100 times before, but the goth fashion to some people is very important. Like, to some people you have to dress goth to be goth, but lately a lot of people have been saying like, no, you don't need to actually dress black in order to be goth. You can dress however you want and listen to goth music, and then you can call yourself goth. But yeah, it's still just very inconsistent. Like, sometimes the fashion is very important. If you see a goth girl online, they often do look goth. Like me, I look like this. You can just see in 1 second, like, okay, she's alternative, she's goth. A lot of times, like, the image of a goth on social media or on television is the actual typical goth look. But then we also say that fashion isn't really all that important. So it's kind of like difficult, especially again for baby bats, to understand like how important is the fashion. I think it's not all that important. If you like looking goth, if you like looking different, you definitely should, because you should look the way that you want to look. You should be yourself. You should be able to express yourself however you want. But again, there's just a lot of discussion about that. And then it's also very hard to understand like what is actual goth fashion, because there's a lot of different gothic styles. Some people don't agree that pastel goth is actual goth fashion. Knowing what exactly is goth can be kind of hard. Like, what do you need to do in order to actually look like an actual goth? And what exactly do you need to wear in order to be seen as someone who is wearing goth fashion? So on to the next goth struggle that is kind of related to what I've been talking about for the past few minutes. And that is that as a goth, you will always be called a poser or a fake goth. Like, it doesn't even matter how goth you are. It doesn't even matter if you look 100% goth. If you have obviously been goth for more than 10 years, it doesn't even matter how goth you are. You will be called a poser. Like, it's just a thing that happens to, I think, pretty much every single goth. It's one of the most common insults from goth to call each other a poser. And it's also just something that a lot of people will say because they know it kind of hurts a lot for goths, because while no one wants to have a subculture that they really identify with, that is like a really important thing in their life, and then be called not good enough for that subculture or be called fake, even though that subculture is a really big thing in your life, it can just be very annoying and very hard, especially for people who are very insecure about themselves or about if they are actually goth. And this is also a thing which makes a lot of people not want to be goth or not want to be goth anymore, is because they are called fake or a poser so often that they feel like they keep needing to prove themselves. And because that's just so much effort, and because it's so annoying and it's so exhausting to keep trying to prove yourself to others that you're actually a goth, that you're just like, you know, never mind, I'm just myself. I listen to goth music, or I like to look kind of goth, but I'm not even gonna call myself a goth anymore because I will keep being fake claimed. It can just be very annoying because you always need to think about if you're saying the right things about goth, if you're looking goth enough. This is again especially a thing for new goths or baby bats or young people or people who don't have a lot of access to goth fashion. Like, it can just be very hard to feel like you're not good enough because people keep telling you that. I've also made a video about this, so I'll put it up on the screen and in the description below, so do check that out, because I think that is a very important topic, especially for people who are new to the goth subculture. I recommend watching that video because I think it will make you feel a lot better about yourself. But yeah, in my experience, like, I've been goth for many years and I've been called a poser way more often than I can count, for like any reason that anyone can ever think of. Like, it doesn't even matter what I do, I'm a poser for it. Like, people have called me a poser because I don't dye my eyebrows. Like, what the actual hell? People call me a poser because I don't get my clothes in shops that they like. People call me a poser because I care too much about what other people think, as if being a goth makes you immune to other people's opinions and other people's words. Like, people will just try to find things that are just slightly not goth and call you a poser for that because they know it hurts and because they know it's annoying or because they just really like hating on you or whatever. But it can be very annoying. Like there have been some posts from me where I just got like more than 10 comments telling me that I am a poser, which I know I am not, so it doesn't really hurt me because I know that I'm not a poser. Like, how could I have been a goth poser for like 10 years? Like, I don't really understand why people think that they can hurt me with that as someone who's been goth for a really long time. Like, if I listen to goth music, if I like the goth fashion, if I love goth literature, I love literally anything goth, that just because I do a certain thing, I'm immediately not goth anymore. Like, it's just annoying. I'm sorry that I keep touching my hair, by the way, but it keeps falling in my face and it's really annoying. And I don't want to put it back because then I look stupid. So the last struggle that I want to talk about is something I have also talked about before, and it's that goths are often seen as objects. It has become a very common thing for goths to be objectified or to be fetishized. And because I've talked about this before, the main thing that I want to say about this is just that it makes a lot of goths feel uncomfortable. It's a very common misconception about goths that they are kinky, into BDSM, or that they should be seen as an object, or that they dress goth because they want to appeal to men, or that everyone who is goth wants to be your goth girlfriend. It's a very common misconception, and it can be so dangerous because as soon as people start seeing you as an object, they don't see you as a human. And all these misconceptions about goths can lead up to this, which makes men or people see you as an object, see you as something that is only there for their pleasure or to look good or to look hot. And that causes people to treat you wrong, because when they don't see you as a human anymore, they don't have empathy anymore, they don't understand that they can hurt you, whether it's mentally or physically, and people just start crossing too many boundaries because they don't see someone as a human but just as a little gothic doll that they can use or whatever, or that they can just treat as an object, or that they can fetishize. And this can be so dangerous. This is such a big problem, which is why I've already made multiple videos about this, but it's just something that I hope will soon not be a misconception anymore, that goth isn't about all that at all, and that goth should be seen as people and should be treated as people, which to me is very like logical and obvious, but apparently some people just don't understand that. So yeah, this objectification can be a very big struggle to many goths. I don't think I've met any goth who hasn't experienced this at all. I know someone who is kind of a baby bat. She's been goth for not very long, and she's had so many messages on Instagram just asking inappropriate questions and saying inappropriate things, and she's just had so many things happen to her already just because she's a goth, and she hasn't even been goth for that long. So just imagine how much this happens to goths. Like, even if baby bats experience this, imagine the people who have been a very popular goth for a long time. Like, they have to deal with a lot of inappropriate things, which I think is so unnecessary. So yeah, this recording took literally an hour, so I don't know how long this video is gonna be. And I'm sorry that some topics were like really detailed and some topics weren't, but that's mostly because some things I've talked about in previous videos, which you can just watch or you can find back, and I don't want to repeat myself over and over again because that will just be boring for people who view all my videos. But yeah, if you want to know more about these things, you can ask me questions in my comment section below. You can message me on Instagram if there's any struggles that you have that you want to talk about. My DMs are always open if you want to talk. Like, if there's anyone who understands your struggles as a goth, it's another goth, and I will definitely try to respond. I can be kind of busy because of work, but I will try to respond to your comments or your messages as soon and as much as I can. So yeah, do tell us about your experience in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, consider subscribing, leave a like and a comment on the video, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye bye!